Well, welcome to another edition of the Mayor's Show. With me today is Doug Berglund, Director of Emergency Management with Washington County. Doug, thanks for coming in today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor, for the invite. I appreciate it.
You bet, kind of interested to know what it is that your department does and what you're in charge of. So if you could start, Doug, what is emergency management?
Well, emergency management coordinates with public safety, and we coordinate with during disasters. We support all public safety agencies, and then we also do it behind the scenes with planning initiatives.
Okay. So with our community, say, how do you interact with our community? What?
Well, we can do it on several fronts. In the past, we've attended the Lake Elmo Fall Festival, and we put out a booth there, and that's our public outreach campaign where we supply educational materials for the citizens. We also work closely with the fire chief here and the Washington County Sheriff's Office. We're emergency management in Washington County as part of the Sheriff's Office, so we have a very close relationship with the law enforcement folks there. But we work closely with the Lake Elmo Fire Chief in your community specifically. He's the emergency manager in your community, so we have an emergency management council of which the fire chief is on. So we've actually, between your fire chief and myself, have started an initiative where we're going to look to go to all the city councils within Washington County and meet at the workshops and discuss what roles and responsibilities there are for city council folks and mayors and administrators during the event of a disaster. So those are the types of things that we'll bring forward to all the cities and discuss what everybody's role is in emergency management, but specifically what we can offer during those times.
That sounds like a good idea. So you're actively doing this right
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
Okay.
We expect that Lake Elmo will probably be the first community to do that. We initially wanted to get that done in the late spring, but the floods here in Minnesota and also in Washington County were so active in that we had to put that aside. But now that most of that information that we've needed to supply to FEMA regarding the floods, we've submitted. So now we can set that aside and put this on the front burner and move forward this fall. So you'll look forward to seeing us again here real soon at one of the workshops.
Okay, so the floods kind of kept you busy.
Yeah.
What do you do? Explain it.
Well, in the early stages, when the rivers began to rise, we were in a situational period where we were just watching them very close, and we worked with the cities that were being affected to prepare for what they needed to prepare for as far as ordering sand and getting sandbags and things like that. We like to keep the elected officials aware as to what levels the rivers are at so that they can be ready to act. This particular year, in the very early spring, the rivers didn't rise to what we thought they were going to, but then this summer, beginning June 11th, when we had those multiple rain and heavy precipitation events, the rivers rose, and they rose quickly. So we did reach flood stage on both sides of the river. And we work closely with mostly the public works folks in those cities, and we were available to get resources for them if they needed. Most of the cities that are affected here in Washington County are used to it, and they're prepared for it, and they know what operations they need to do. So, which is good for us. They don't count on us as other communities would on their emergency managers when it's flood specific. But we were there for them if they needed to. But mainly at this point, it's now just tracking documentation. There's a federal limit, a monetary loss threshold for FEMA, and for Washington County, that's $833,000, that if we reach that point in loss, we can try and recover that if there's a presidential declaration. And there was. Yeah. But so we track all those things, and we keep track of the costs, and then emergency management will submit that to FEMA for a request for reimbursement.
Okay. What kind of a budget do you have? Does your department have?
My department is just under $300,000, okay. And we do receive multiple grants through FEMA. And then my department also is part of the Radiological Emergency Preparedness Program, which is sponsored through FEMA, through HSEM, and it's actually paid for by Xcel Energy. It's a radiological program. So we support a reception center in the event of an evacuation at Prairie Island Nuclear Plant. So that's almost a third of our budget, that grant that we get from Xcel Energy. But we also have a Emergency Managers Performance Grant, EMPG grant, that's administered through HSEM that helps fund some of our budget.
Okay. Now, if we talked about the flood, Would a resident taxpayer somewhere, it's odd, would they call you directly, but does that happen? Could they? or
It
would
does, it does happen, and it's a very difficult situation for us because we really can't, we're not in a position to help individuals. The funding that we were going after, the preliminary damage assessment funding that we were going after is for public infrastructure. The reimbursement funding that they offer is for public infrastructure. There is individual assistance that's available, but it has to reach a certain level, a certain threshold for that to become active. And in this particular instance for Washington County, that didn't happen. So we work closely with Washington County Public Works and Washington County Public Health. And in those rare instances where a homeowner or individual will call my office, I'll call Public Works, and if we can, we'll try to do what we can to help them. They're tax-paying citizens, so we'll do whatever we can to help. But we have to be careful because in the event of a large disaster, we just simply can't. That's not the vehicle that we go to try and get all that stuff accomplished.
So you kind of facilitate it, get them in the right direction
Right,
and the rest
yep.
of it.
And
Okay.
we work with volunteer agencies that can go in there and do that, the community threads, Red Cross, Salvation Army, the ones that can go in there and help those folks. We help organize and put that together through our Emergency Operations Center when we activate it.
Okay. How long have you been with this agency? And how did it come to be that you're there?
I've been with Washington County for almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in November. I've been the Director of Emergency Management since January. I've been in public safety for over 18 years. I'm currently a captain on the Forest Lake Fire Department. So I've been around public safety for a long, long time. I started as a full-time in the construction trades, but about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided that public safety is where I wanted to move to. So I went to school to get my associate's degree in public safety, and during that time, I took some emergency management courses and went to get the state emergency management certificate, and that's when I realized that that's where I wanted to go. And had a fortunate opportunity, timing was perfect. After I got that degree, Washington County was hiring for a position, so I was able to get it. And so
good for
I
you.
live in Washington County, and now I work in Washington County, so
Great.
it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, how long has the agency been with Washington County? When did it start?
Emergency management?
the whole-
Well, I believe it was in the mid-1980s, 1985, 86, we started emergency management office there. Lowell Johnson, who's currently the public works director, or the public health director at Washington County, was the first emergency manager for Washington County. So there's been a long history there of emergency management. We're currently under the sheriff's office, and that's only been for a little bit over a year. But it works really well because of our association with public safety and the folks that we work with. We belong under the sheriff's office, and it's been very, very successful. We've been able to do a lot of good things since we moved over there.
Great. I know we've talked about National Preparedness Month. Let me
Yes.
ask you about that.
Yes.
How did it get, why do we have it? What's
Well,
the purpose?
National Preparedness is an initiative that was put forth by FEMA in 2004. And I think the connection with September is due to 9/11. But it's an initiative to get families and businesses and schools and communities more prepared for disasters. And it's mainly an educational piece. All of the emergency management departments throughout the country take part in that and try and spread the emergency management word. Put out information on how to form a communications plan or an egress plan for all hazards, for a fire in your home or a tornado or a flood or all sorts of disasters. And we have the information in our office that we disseminate whenever we can at public events.
Okay, on that, I imagine your home is pretty prepared, properly prepared for any type of emergencies. How could an average family, or would you recommend a couple of things to an average family to prepare for these eventuals?
Sure, there's always room for improvement, so I'm not going to claim that I'm ready.
Right.
I'm the most ready. But the best things we can do, there's several things we can do, is form a communications plan. That's really important. In the event of a disaster or a major event in your neighborhood and the family becomes separated, having a communications plan is absolutely critical. That way, if you're separated, you know where you want to go, who you need to talk to, especially the younger folks, advising them that in those types of events, text messaging is better because there's more likely to get through than a phone call. If, during a major event, the phone lines can get tied up. So having that planning and those discussions ahead of time is very, very helpful. When I mentioned an evacuation route or an egress route, there could be an event that takes place where you come home, you can't get back in your neighborhood, or schools are being closed. It's good to have a plan. All the way from if there's a fire in your house, where do you go if you have to leave the house? You know, especially for younger children, where you're going to meet at the neighbor's house or the tree at the end of the street or something. And take that and expand on that. And that's, I think, where people stop. In a major event, a tornado or event or something where you can't get back into the neighborhood, have a plan where you're going to the next, a friend's house in the next community over. Or, you can take it out even further and maybe you have a cabin up north or something. And you take it to every single level and have a preconceived plan as to where you're gonna go in events like that. Those are the types of things, long-term stuff that we're looking for to get the message out to people to start to think about. We also wanna promote having a go kit in your car and a go kit in your basement. FEMA recommends that folks have 3 gallons of water per person per day for 3 days. At home. So, a family of 4 should have 12 gallons of water in their basement stored. And you want to have things in your car to be ready to go, such as flashlights and batteries and a NOAA weather radio and those types of things. And the information that we disseminate has checklists for all that type of information.
Okay. So what are we talking about? We're talking about tornadoes, blizzards,
Yep.
terrorist action,
Yep.
interruptions of power.
Yep.
Pretty much covering the gamut.
Yep. All hazard.
Okay.
All hazard. So we're talking about flu pandemics, tornadoes, floods, severe winter weather, all those types of things. And we have checklists, and we actually have separate preparedness tips that are disaster specific too. And you can go to our website, which is under the Washington County Sheriff's Office website, under emergency management. And we have links there. And FEMA has websites too where you can go to ready.gov or something like that and find this information that's disaster specific. But for our purposes, what we're preparing for is all hazard approach.
Okay. An incident significant that Washington County Emergency Management has dealt with. The flooding, certainly not insignificant, but something more of a
I think
instantaneous.
for Washington County folks to recollect that's familiar to them would probably be the Hugo tornado.
Sure.
I responded to the Hugo tornado, but I was in the capacity of a firefighter at that time. It's
Right up in your neck of the woods.
Yep,
there.
yep. I was one of the first to respond to that in a mutual aid capacity from Forest Lake. So, but I did get to see some of the things that emergency management was doing there. As it so happens, I have a good friend that lived on 159th there. So, in returning to his house in the days after, I got to see some of the initiatives that were put forward, and realizing that there's a very close relationship that emergency management has to have there with the city. And that's one of the things that we like to get out to folks is the role of emergency management when something like that takes place. There's so many things that need to happen when things like that happen. The communication for those folks that are affected and the elected officials that are representing them, the media that's involved with those, the people that want to come and take a look, the perimeter protection that needs to happen there, which is usually provided for by law enforcement, the donations management that comes in, sometimes from all over the country when something like that happens. And then, of course, the documentation of the damage. The debris management, what do you do with all that stuff that's all over the streets? And your local public works folks will have a very intimate role with that. So we work at all those plannings and the planning initiatives and things that come out of that come through the Emergency Operations Center, which emergency management is operating. So that's why we need to have a good relationship with all the folks within the city. The public health people, the public works people, the city administrators, the mayors, the council members. We want to get to know all of them so that we're not standing there the day of the disaster introducing ourselves.
That's smart. My memory of that situation is terrible and tragic as it was that the aftermath was really handled very well.
It did.
Between the sheriff and the city and obviously you folks. So if that was indicative of what we could expect, then my hat's off to you.
That's certainly what we hope. And from my perspective, things seem to go really well there too. There's always improvements that can be made, and usually they fall under communication because that's the easiest one to fall down. But from my perspective, I think things went really well and really smooth there, as best as you could expect. And we have been using that for years as a benchmark as to, okay, what went wrong there and what went right? And then we just continued to plan. But the best thing to do is to incorporate all the people that are gonna be there that day and help get their thoughts on how we plan and prepare for it. And that's what the workshops that we're gonna conduct hope to do.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming in and sharing a bit of your insight and what you do. It's helpful. Doug, may you have an uneventful career, I guess, in what you do.
I sure appreciate that, and I look forward to working with you if we ever have to. Hopefully, we don't ever have to, but
Yeah.
it's good that we're able to do this, and now we know each other, and
Sounds good.
we hope it'll go
We'll be
smooth.
prepared.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, another edition of Lake Elmo's Mayor Show. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.